Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome. My name is Andrea Oram. Today, excuse me. Today we're going to talk about music leadership, power struggles versus authority. It's going to be this is a good one. Oh, I'm excited to talk about this. Power struggles versus authority. But first things first, I thought I'd introduce myself. If you're new around here, welcome. I'm so glad you are here. Say hi in the comments if you are watching live. If you're watching replay, you can also say hi in the comments. I'd love to connect with you and see what you're up to this Monday morning. But our topic, power struggles versus authority. It's a big one. This is something that a lot of music teachers talk about because our rehearsal spaces, our classes, are typically larger than your average class. And that's not always true. It really depends on the level that you're teaching at. If you're teaching elementary students, then hopefully you're not teaching more students than your elementary teacher peers. But I did student teach in a school where sometimes you got a class plus a third for music. So that means instead of having 30 kids, you have 40 kids or whatever it looks like. So it really depends on the teaching situation, of course. And with choirs, you're naturally, unless you have a broken up schedule or something like that for like two different sections of the same choir or something like that, you're going to have a few more students in a class most of the time because choir, it does better when it's bigger. Like when you have more students, it actually works out better because they sing out more. But B, a lot of kids like taking choir. Or C, they have to take a music class of some sort, and choir is easier for the students who don't want to play an instrument than picking a class with an instrument in it. Because they have to, buy an instrument and learn how to play an instrument and all those things, right? So there's lots of reasons why your class might be fuller with more students than another class. And sometimes that can lead to some challenges with classroom management and with, commanding a sense of presence in the room, right? So I wanted to address the idea of power struggles versus authority. And here's how I'm going to reference it. Here's how I'm going to clarify it the most, okay? Power struggles are centered on reacting. Power struggles are focused around the idea that something a student says or something a student does, you're just reacting. You're reacting out of, whatever happened, and you're just blurting and reacting to it, essentially. Versus authority, if you're focused on keeping a sense of authority in the room and having your authority in front of your students, you're responding. I know that maybe doesn't sound super clear, so I'm going to clarify it with a few examples. But that's just an example of, that's like a clarifying piece of it for me. That clarifies the difference for me. Does that make sense? Because when I've had moments where it could have turned into a power struggle. So, for example, I had a new student at one point who I asked the students to find a scattered spot around the room so that we could do some moving so they weren't going to bump into each other. So they were spread out. And I had a student who started touching the technology equipment. And I immediately said to him, that's off limits. That's off bounds for you to touch. And he, made this face and wanted to go touch it again. And I said, if you choose to do that, here's the consequences for it. If you choose to not do it and, do this, then that would be the right choice. I'll leave that up to you, but I just want to let you know the consequences ahead of time. Right? So instead of threatening a consequence or threatening, oh, you're going to get it when you touch, whatever. And that sort of, oh, well, I want to see what happens when I touch it, right? Or mess with it. So a lot of it has to do with tone of voice, but a lot of it has to do with, okay, well, I'm going to present you with the options. Here's the options of what you can choose to do. And here's the options of what happens when you choose to do that. And he made the right choice ultimately. He decided, well, I don't think I want that consequence. Or I don't want that outcome after I choose to do that. So I will follow the directions, right? And some students will push those boundaries, right? But being communicative ahead of time or upfront is, I have found, the most important thing to do. And then to walk away. So instead of just like staying in that moment, and allowing that student to feel that sense of inflated power or emotional energy over you or something like that, I just walk away. I give the options. I say, I'll give you a second to think about it. I'll come to, and it depends on the situation, right? But if it's a student who's choosing not to try the activity or try working, right? I'll walk up to them and I'll see if there's an issue, right? If they have trouble starting, like if we're playing an instrument or something, and instead of trying to force them to start right away, I'll say, well, here's a couple options. I will let you think about that for a minute, and then I'll come back and see what you've decided. And so I'm walking away and I'm giving that student time to think, time to make a choice. And sometimes I come back and they say, well, I'm not going to do this or this, because I've given them two options. I say, well, that's not an option. Here's the two options again. I'll give you another minute to think. And so I'm presenting, even though they don't want either of the options, I'm not getting into a power struggle with them. I am giving them two options, and I'm maybe noticing what they're struggling with. So I might say, like, I notice that you seem angry. So I'm narrating what's happening with them rather than getting into that energy with them. Does that make sense? So anyway, those are a couple examples of power struggle versus authority that I have found really clarifying that idea of responding instead of reacting. And ultimately, like, if I address, and this is part of the way that I use authority in my classroom space, in my teaching space. If I have a student who is disruptive in a very public way, say they're blurting out in front of the whole choir, then I need to respond to it in a slightly more public way, right? Versus if a student is disrupting in a less public way, I'm not going to address that in a public way in front of everybody else and embarrass that student and make our relationship a struggle, right? So, for example, if I have a student blurt out something rude, I address that. I don't react, I just respond to it, but I respond to it right in the moment in a more public way. And if I need to, if it continues, then I'll then address it later in a more private way, because they might just be seeking attention. But to try and address things privately as much as possible is really, really helpful. So there's a couple tips from me on power struggles versus authority and not getting into power struggles with students, because it's not worth it. It doesn't end well for either person feeling good about what happens. And ultimately, students respect us more when we show that we're human, but we also demonstrate just that basic authority that, hey, I'm the captain of this ship right now, and I am here to help everybody succeed, not just one person. I'm not here to do what's good for one person. I'm here to do what's good for the whole group. And I think that they typically recognize that. Most students are able to respond to that in a positive way and to then, rise to the occasion and make a good choice. You do have your exceptions, and that's something to work with. And sometimes you have to work with other adults to make that happen. But that's typically what I have found to be useful. So if this video was helpful for you, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're able to tune in and catch me connecting on this sort of concept of authority and power struggles and whatnot. If you are in the new music teacher support and community, well, I'm so glad you're here. Check out the guide section for more helpful information with that. And if you're not in the group yet, but you're watching this video on YouTube or somewhere else, check out the link in the description of this video, and you can go see if more helpful videos, more helpful information regarding some of these topics. I love to talk about these topics. I love to help newer music teachers feel like they can be confident and supported as they're starting this journey, because it's so fun. But sometimes you just need to learn some extra skills that maybe you didn't learn in student teaching, or you didn't learn in a prep program, or you didn't go through a prep program, and so you really want someone to walk alongside you. I'm your girl. Okay. So with that, I'm going to let you go. Have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you again tomorrow morning. Bye for now.